Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a tutorial to make some mini rainbow charms. I've been making these for about a year now, and more recently I made a little kit for the ladies who attended the NorCal PHA meetup, and that was back in November. But I've been gifting these in Happy Mail for some time now, and I've been requested a couple times to make a tutorial for these. So these rainbow charms are about 1.5 inches wide, and you can kind of bend them to make them a bit smaller too. But today I have the materials and measurements to make this charm. Here you go. You might want to take a screenshot of this. So what you'll need is some twine, floral wire, embroidery floss, a wire cutter, and some gold or silver thread, and a glue gun. And these are the measurements for each of the materials. So for the twine, you'll need 2 lengths of 4 inches and 1 of 5 inches. For the wire, you'll need a 2, 2.5, and 3-inch lengths. And for the embroidery floss, you'll want an 18-inch, 20-inch, and 24-inch lengths. And I usually choose 3 different colors for my embroidery floss. So there's a lot of tutorials out there where the rainbow is a bit bigger and it's wrapped around a thick piece of twine. And for those tutorials, you can actually use a glue gun and then just wrap your way around the arches. But for mine, I do a slightly different method. Because they're so small and I don't have a glue gun that has a fine tip nozzle, I decided to make use of floral wire and kind of a, I don't know, macrame type of method where you do single knots all the way around each of the arches. So just to show you my materials, I have all my embroidery floss on a ring like this, so it's easy for me to choose colors. And the floral wire that I use is a Dollar Tree floral wire, so you can just use this. It's very thin gauge, but it's actually thick enough for, you know, bending the rainbows into shape. So some of the tutorials out there, you'll see that the rainbow is not quite arched enough, and I've seen ones where people make the rainbows as wall art and they actually put some wire inside it, and that was my inspiration for making these, was that I had floral wire on hand and I figured I could make these little charms using that. So let me show you how to wrap the charm. So this is the smallest length. This is the 2-inch length. And here is the 4-inch length of twine. So we're going to basically do the small arch. And then I have my 18-inch length of embroidery thread. So you kind of want to center the wire on the twine, and then you're going to basically, with your left hand, hold on to the embroidery thread and then bring your thread, the tail of it, over this part and then pull it through the hole that you've made, the loop that you've made. And then you're just going to pull it tight. So just like that. And I'll show it one more time. You're basically going to bring it over all 3 pieces, meaning over the tail that you've created here, the short tail, over the wire, and over the twine. So you'll basically have a loop, and you're going to pull this length, the long tail, through that loop, and then you're going to tighten it. Sorry, I'm out of frame there. So you see that? And then what will happen is you're going to start wrapping or tying the knots around this short tail so you can hide it. So what we're going to do is we're going to scoot this down carefully to the end, and then we're going to start making fairly tight knots. So the lengths of embroidery floss that I have on this tutorial, I just want to let everyone know that I tie my knots very tightly. So if you want to start off making these, maybe add an inch or 2 to each of these measurements for the embroidery floss until you're comfortable with making the knots, and then you can shorten them to the measurements I have here, just so that you can save on your embroidery floss. So again, let me show you the knot again. You're going to bring it over the tail, the wire, and the twine, making a loop like this, and then you're going to pull it through the hole. So pull it through the hole, then you're going to tighten the knot. And then you're going to want to do that all the way to the end of this wire. So let me give you an example of one that's completed. So here's a set where I've tied the knots all the way to the end. And I've done it for each of the first and the second arch. For the third one, my wire measurement is actually a bit longer. So what you'll want to do is you'll kind of want to line up all the arches. And this one you'll see is a bit longer. So I'm going to complete the knots until I reach about that length of the pink. Actually, here, now that I've gotten them tight, you'll see that that length of wire is a bit too long, which is fine. And then what you'll want to do is take your wire cutter and clip off the end. So there's a little bit of wire sticking out, but that really doesn't matter. You can leave your embroidery floss tail hanging, which I think I will do in this case. And I'll be right back with showing you how to wrap the thread around these arches. Okay, so before we start wrapping the thread, I just want to show you that I've trimmed each of these tails down to the length of the twine. So in this particular example, I'm just going to make it so that you can see the rainbow kind of coming down on one side with the embroidery floss tails. But what I normally do is that I trim the embroidery thread down until it's about, an 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So the tail, I've trimmed it all the way down so it's only a little bit left, and you can add a little, very, very small drop of hot glue and then just kind of paste these down. And then since these are kind of wrapped around this wire, you can kind of adjust it so that it's hidden on the inner side of the rainbow. And I'll just show you an example. For this rainbow, you actually can't see, I actually can't tell where I did my hot glue. It's been hidden pretty well by the embroidery thread. So yeah, it's you're not going to be able to see it if you make a small enough drop of glue. I'll show you where, I think this is one of the first rainbows I made, and I did too much glue, and you can see that here. But again, it's still a bit difficult to see unless you look really hard. So I can tell because I basically made a mistake on these and just used too much glue. And also just want to point out, you can also double up on your twine. So here's with one length of twine for each of the arches, and this is with double, and it looks more substantial, so you kind of see that. So it's up to you if you want to use 2 lengths of twine or just one for each of the arches. They look, pretty similar to me, but if you like them a bit bolder, you can use 2. So let's get started on the wrapping now. And you'll want to hold them pretty tightly together so that you can maintain the evenness of the arches. So I'm going to kind of just unwind it here and then find the end. Okay. So basically, I'm going to go in one direction around the rainbow and then come back on in the other direction. So it makes it look like it has like a cross or zigzag type of wrapping. On this one, I just did one direction and then came back around and overlaid around that same wrapping. So you can do it. This looks a little bit more messy. This looks a little tidy. I think they both look fine. It's just your own preference. So I'm going to leave a bit of a tail here, and what we'll do is it'll eventually get, we can either tie a knot or we can hide it. So I'm just going to do like 2 or 3 and wraps around the rainbow, and I'm going to go kind of at an angle. Oh, sorry, bumped the camera there. And then keep going on an angle. I wrap it around 2 or 3 times. And if you see your floral wire poking out, you can just basically take the embroidery thread and kind of like tug it down a little bit. I'll show you that later if we have any showing. So I've gone in one direction now. Now I'm going to go in the other direction to get back to where I started. And you don't need to use as much, and I think I did it a bit too tightly. So you might want to loosen it up so that you can actually see all 3 arches. And you don't need to do as many on this time around because you've already made it pretty sturdy if you've done it fairly tightly the first time around. So now I have, this is the tail that I started with, here's the long end, and I like the amount of wrapping I've done, so I'm just going to trim it now. And I'm going to tie a few knots. Let's see if I can do this. It's hard to do it when you're holding it up in the air like this. So tie one knot, and now I'm going to tie, I'm going to just do 3 knots and that should be fine. Yep, there we go. So now I'm going to just trim. And if you really want to make it really secure, you can always put a little dab of hot glue. But I don't think it's really necessary. You can hardly see that end of gold thread. But yeah, here is the rainbow. And on this side, because I wound it so tightly, on this side you can't see the center arch, but on this side you can totally see it. So now I'm going to start trimming down the ends. I'll trim it down here. I kind of do it a couple times, like sometimes I'm not happy with, I start off longer so you don't want to over trim it. Kind of like that length, so I'm going to trim this side a little bit more. So yeah, that's pretty good. So there you go. That's a completed rainbow, and all you need to do is add a jump ring to the top. And what I try to do is I put it in between the top and the second arch. But yeah, and then you can brush this twine out so that it looks really full like this. You can just like unravel it, and there you have a completed rainbow charm. So that's it, and thank you for watching my tutorial. I hope you will make lots of these, and please tag me on Instagram if you do, at NorCaliGirl888. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye.